Eric Muathe for the weekend of July 6th, 2014. Let's take a look at how the US market traded on Thursday. We see the Dow closing for the first time above 17,000. Nasdaq getting very close to 4,500, up 0.63 for Friday's session. S&P 500 was unchanged for Thursday's session, excuse me. If you take a look at market action for the week, S&P 500 was up 1%, closing at all-time weekly closing highs. We take a look at the Nasdaq, which is also up and closing at multi-year highs, up 2% for the week. And we take a look at the Dow, which is now for the first time closing above 17,000. What's really interesting here is if you take a look at the Nasdaq monthly long-term view, the Nasdaq is getting very close to this high here in 2000. So it's not really impossible for this market to eventually tag these highs, maybe on a monthly closing basis, because on a monthly closing basis you can see that the high in February of 2000 and this monthly closing high previously here in 2000 was at 4696.69. so you can see that the Nasdaq is very close to eventually tagging that previous monthly closing high. So you can see that if the market can push higher here, we can actually have all-time monthly breakout for the Nasdaq. So that's something the market could do, can do, might do. Who knows? Of course, we have to keep watching the charts to see how that is all gonna play out. So if we come back to the weekly chart for the Nasdaq, we see that this is now week number 3 above the previous weekly closing highs here of 43.36. Market is doing well. You can see that we were expecting resistance on this level here. The market has since taken that out. We are now back above 69.10, and the last time we actually did hold above 69.10 was this period here, and you can see how the market had a nice run, generally moving from here about 3,800 all the way to about 4,400. So that is the kind of market that could actually stay strong. So if it holds above 69.10, be on the lookout for extension of this move. A daily look at the Nasdaq here, we see that we had a breakout again there, and that has held. We still continue making higher highs here. We got this nice move here. Normally when you see this type of move on the RSI, it means that we are going to get a pullback, and then eventually the market is going to make another high in price, and probably that's going to come with lower RSI action. So my thinking here is that we are going to see further highs as far as the Nasdaq is concerned here in the next coming weeks, even after a pullback. That's my thinking, just because of the level of strength of the RSI here. And just to clarify that, you can see the last time the Nasdaq was above 69.10 was here. So here, which were not the highs. The highs came after it made a higher high with declining RSI action. So we haven't seen negative divergence on the RSI. My thinking is for the next couple of weeks, even with a pullback, the Nasdaq still continues making new highs. If you take a look at the hourly for the Nasdaq, you see that the hourly broke out, hence the nice move. On the hourly for the Nasdaq, there was a breakout here above this declining line, and so once we moved above that beginning of July, we had a nice push to the upside. If we take a look at the Nasdaq monthly just for strength, we see that on the monthly we are holding above 69.10, hence the continued push to the upside. The Dow weekly, as you can see here, maybe signs of tiredness here. We are making higher highs on the weekly chart, but the technicals have not budged one bit. So this could be problematic here, especially if the market starts moving lower here and we observe that the RSI is now making a negative divergence, which is going to be look like that. That would suggest that we are going to be in for some type of a pullback. A Dow daily, shows that there could be resistance on the top side of the RSI line here. Maybe I can show you a clean chart for the Dow daily so we can see what we are talking about. I'm talking about RSI highs line like that. You can see that we're hitting that level there, the top side of that line, so that might suggest resistance here. Also, we are making higher highs in price, but we seem to be making lower lows on the RSI, especially if we get a pullback. I look at the Dow weekly chart, and you can see, you can argue this couple ways. There is a breakout above the declining top, so this is a nice breakout suggesting higher prices, but you can also argue that this is where we see a pullback, because any resistance is going to come at that level, which is where we got this high here on the RSI there, here, and then we've hit that line once before, which was this short-term high here, and then now we are back in this general line here. So if that turns into resistance early in the new week, that could suggest that this market is due for much needed rest. If we take a look at the S&P 500 weekly, we see that now we are above this channel line, which we've been watching for resistance there. Now this is very nice channel here, so this could actually be a trap move above the channel, which would bring it back into the channel with a big move lower. So it's very possible that this is a trap move slightly above the channel. The next week could be back below the channel to respect this long-term trend line. So it remains to be seen what the market is doing here. Remember, on the weekly we are now above 69.10. That always opens the possibility for higher prices. S&P 500 weekly, on the daily here, we see that as long as the S&P 500 daily is holding above 69.10, expect the market to thrust to the upside. Remember, we've been saying that as long as the MACD, the main MACD, is holding above 0, that would suggest the market is due. Even with a pullback, the market should continue pushing higher. So the market has not really given us any signal that indicates it wants to go down. Now let's take a look at, if we take a look at the Dow Transports, and this is for those who could looking for ways to short the market. You really have to be careful here, because this is a fresh breakout on the Dow Transports. After a couple weeks of rest, now we are making a new weekly closing high. Also, transports remain above 69.10. The monthly for the transport is scary strong. You can see here on the monthly for the transports, it's been trading like this above 69.10 all the way back to September, October period of 2013. So as long as it's holding above 69.10 on the monthly, expect this market to continue pushing higher. If you take a look at the VIX daily, you see that it continues being under tremendous pressure. So the VIX daily here, you can see closing at fresh 52-week close. We are not going to move higher in the VIX until it moves above the declining line on the RSI. We are not going to move higher on the VIX until it moves above this declining line here, because that's just the way it's been trading. So until we get movement above that RSI resistance line and movement above the price resistance line, you'd expect the general market to be at least not selling off heavily, and that will be the takeaway. If you take a look at Apple here on a monthly chart, we've been talking about 91.48 being the price to watch. So Apple is trading above that price, so it's a buy, and it's also now above 69.10. So it needs to hold above 91.48 on the monthly, and also needs to be above 69.10 on the monthly if it's going to do well. The last time it held above 69.10 was this time period here, when it held above, let's call it post-split price of about $30 here, all the way to the highs of about 96. Of course, this is post-split. So above 69.10 on the monthly and above 91.48 on the price level there. If you take a look at the weekly, you see that there's a fresh breakout here on the weekly chart, and so you can use 92.22 as a stop area, because now we have a fresh breakout here after 2 weeks of rest. which is the minimum requirement. So I think as long as it's holding above 92.22, as long as the RSI stays above 69.10, the stock should continue moving higher.